Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Today I want to explore something that feels counterintuitive in a world where everyone is broadcasting their thoughts, opinions, and achievements, the power of silence. Not just any silence, but the kind that leaves people curious, unsettled, and reflective. Confuse them with your silence.in every interaction. People are constantly making assumptions. It's human nature. We take the smallest pieces of information, words, tone, body language, and use them to construct entire narratives about others. Sometimes these assumptions are harmless, but other times they're limiting, biased, or even harmful. What happens when, instead of feeding into these assumptions, you meet them with silence? When you choose silence over reaction, you disrupt the usual flow of conversation. You create a gap, a pause that forces others to stop and reconsider. Silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their own thoughts, biases, and expectations back at them. It's not passive, it's an active choice to resist being put into a box that someone else has created. Imagine a situation where someone makes an offhand comment about you, perhaps it's critical, presumptive, or even unfair. The immediate instinct might be to correct them, defend yourself, or explain your side of the story. But what happens when you simply pause and say nothing? That moment of silence forces them to sit with their words, to question their accuracy or fairness. Instead of a defensive back and forth, they're left wondering, did I go too far? Am I missing something? Silence also prevents escalation. In many cases, reacting emotionally only confirms the assumptions others may have about you. See, I knew they were defensive by remaining silent. You challenge the framework of the conversation. You create ambiguity. Ambiguity unsettles people because it requires them to think rather than react. And in that space, you reclaim your power. Another dimension of this idea is how silence encourages others to reveal more about themselves. When you resist the urge to jump in or explain, people tend to fill the void. They'll often elaborate on their own thoughts, unknowingly exposing the beliefs or biases underlying their assumptions. This can be incredibly insightful. You learn more about their perspective, their insecurities, and their expectations, all without saying a word. Silence isn't about agreement or submission. It's about strategy. It's about understanding that not every assumption deserves a response, and not every comment warrants an explanation. Sometimes the best way to challenge someone's preconceived notions in a world that's constantly competing for your attention, silence is a disruptor. It's the unexpected pause in a noisy room, the stillness that makes people stop what they're doing and lean in. Silence is powerful because it feels intentional. It cuts through the chaos and demands presence. Think about the last time you truly noticed someone's silence. Maybe it was in a conversation when someone didn't immediately rush to fill the gaps, or during a speech where the speaker paused just long enough to make you anticipate their next word. That moment of quiet wasn't an absence, it was a presence. It wasn't passive, it was deliberate. And you remembered it because it stood out. Silence commands attention because it's rare. In an era of constant commentary and instant reactions, people expect noise. They expect arguments to be fought with more words, opinions to be shared without hesitation, and discomfort to be avoided at all costs. But when you choose silence, you break those expectations, you disrupt the pattern, and disruption is memorable. Consider a professional setting. In meetings, people often feel compelled to speak up just to prove they're engaged or knowledgeable. But the person who listens carefully, pauses, and then speaks with precision carries far more weight. Their words matter because they're not lost in the din of unnecessary chatter. Silence, in this case, is not just the absence of noise, it's the preparation for impact. Silence can also be an act of authority. Leaders who use silence wisely are often the most respected. Picture a leader in a tense negotiation or a heated debate. Instead of reacting impulsively, they sit back, assess the situation, and allow silence to do the work. Their calm demeanor speaks volumes. I am in control. I am not rattled. I am not rattled. I am thinking. This quiet confidence shifts the dynamic, making others pay closer attention to what they will say or do next. On a more personal level, silence can amplify your presence. Imagine someone telling a story or sharing an idea. Most people's instinct is to jump in, to relate it back to their own experiences, or to offer a quick comment. But if you choose to stay silent, offering only eye contact and genuine attentiveness, you elevate the moment. Your silence signals that you are fully present, and in doing so, you command the storyteller's respect and attention in return. Silence also makes room for curiosity. When you hold back, people wonder about you. They start to silence reflects confidence. Confidence is often associated with boldness, speaking up, taking charge, and making your presence known. But true confidence doesn't always need to be loud. In fact, one of the most striking displays of confidence is the ability to embrace silence. Silence reflects a sense of self-assurance that doesn't rely on external validation or constant explanation. It says, I am enough as I am, and I don't need to fill every space to prove it. I think about the moments in life when silence speaks louder than words. When someone remains calm and composed in the face of criticism or chaos, it demonstrates a level of inner strength that no amount of talking can replicate. That kind of silence isn't about being passive or indifferent. It's about understanding that you don't need to react to everything around you. Confident silence shows you are secure enough in your identity to let others have their say without feeling the need to defend yourself. One of the ways silence reflects confidence is by showing that you are comfortable with uncertainty. Many people rush to fill silences because they're uncomfortable with ambiguity. They fear being misunderstood or judged. But a confident person knows that silence doesn't mean weakness or indecision, it means thoughtfulness and restraint. Instead of blurting out the first thing that comes to mind, they take their time, process what's being said, and respond with intention when the moment is right. In leadership, silence is often the mark of a great decision maker. A confident leader doesn't feel the need to dominate every conversation or micromanage every detail. They listen more than they speak, and when they do speak, their words carry weight because they've been chosen carefully. Their silence during discussions or deliberations signals to others that they trust the process, their team, and themselves. It creates an environment where others feel empowered to contribute without fear of interruption or overshadowing. Silence also reflects confidence in personal relationships. Consider someone who, instead of jumping to conclusions or arguing, pauses to truly hear their partner's perspective. That pause, the willingness to be silent, says, I value what you're saying and I don't need to prove my point right away. It shows emotional maturity and self-assuredness, creating deeper trust and connection. Another aspect of silent confidence is the ability to withstand criticism or negativity without reacting defensively. When you know your worth, you don't need to engage with every critique or argument. Confident silence in these moments is not about avoidance, it's about knowing which battles are worth fighting. You don't need to prove your value to someone who is determined to misunderstand you. Finally, silence reflects confidence because it allows your actions to speak for themselves. A person who is truly confident doesn't need to talk about their achievements. They let their work, character, and integrity do the talking. In a society obsessed with self-promotion, this quiet confidence stands out. It's a reminder that strength doesn't need to be loud to be effective. In the end, silence is not empty, it's full of meaning. It shows that you are secure in who you are, that you trust yourself enough to resist the urge to fill every gap, and that you don't need validation from others to feel whole. True confidence is quiet, steady, and self-contained, and silence is its most eloquent expression. In a world where constant noise surrounds us, social media updates, endless conversations, and 24/7 news cycles, silence can feel unnatural. Many people avoid silence because it forces them to confront their thoughts, insecurities, and emotions. Yet this is precisely why silence is such a powerful tool for building inner strength. To sit in silence is to face yourself, and that is where growth begins. Inner strength isn't just about resilience in tough times, it's about cultivating self-awareness, emotional stability, and the ability to navigate life's challenges with grace. Silence plays a crucial role in developing these qualities. When you intentionally embrace silence, you create a space for introspection, a rare and transformative act in today's hyper-connected world. This space allows you to hear your inner voice and reflect on your values, desires, and fears without the influence of external noise. Consider the discipline required to sit in silence. For many, the initial experience can be uncomfortable. Thoughts flood and worries about the future, regrets about the past, or even mundane distractions. But over time, this practice becomes a form of mental training. Just as physical exercise strengthens the body, silence strengthens the mind. It teaches you how to observe your thoughts without being overwhelmed by them, fostering a sense of calm and clarity that extends to every area of your life. Silence also builds inner strength by helping you process emotions. In moments of anger, grief, or anxiety, our instinct is often to talk it out or distract ourselves. But silence offers a different path. By sitting with your emotions instead of running from them, you learn to understand their origins and manage them more effectively. This self-regulation is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence, and it empowers you to respond thoughtfully to challenges rather than react impulsively. In relationships, silence can be a source of strength as well. When conflicts arise, the ability to pause and reflect before responding is a sign of maturity and self-control. Silence in these moments isn't about avoiding confrontation, it's about ensuring that your words and actions come from a place of thoughtfulness rather than defensiveness. This approach not only strengthens your own sense of integrity, but also fosters deeper, more meaningful connections with others. Another way silence builds inner strength is by fostering resilience in the face of uncertainty. Life is unpredictable, and we often seek answers or reassurance from external sources. But when you cultivate the ability to sit in silence, you learn to find comfort within yourself. You become less reliant on others for validation or direction, trusting instead in your own instincts and capacity to handle whatever comes your way. This self-reliance is a profound source of empowerment. Silence also strengthens your ability to focus. In a world of constant distractions, the ability to sit quietly and concentrate on a single thought or task is increasingly rare and valuable. Whether through meditation, journaling, or simply spending time in nature, moments of intentional silence help you develop the mental discipline to stay present and engaged. This focus translates into greater productivity, creativity, and a deeper sense of purpose. Finally, silence connects you in a world dominated by constant chatter, endless notifications, and a culture that equates busyness with productivity. Silence can feel unnatural or even intimidating. Yet silence is one of the most profound tools for building inner strength. It is within the stillness that we discover who we truly are, confront what holds us back, and cultivate the resilience needed to navigate life's challenges. Inner strength is not just the ability to persevere in difficult times, it's a combination of self-awareness, emotional stability, and the confidence to face the unknown. Silence helps build this foundation because it forces us to sit with ourselves to process thoughts, emotions, and experiences without distraction. It is in these quiet moments that we cultivate the clarity and calm necessary for personal growth. Silence teaches self-awareness. The first way silence builds inner strength is by fostering self-awareness. When we are constantly surrounded by noise, it's easy to lose touch with ourselves. We become reactive, driven by external pressures and expectations. Silence creates space to reflect on our values, desires, and fears. It allows us to step back from the noise and ask essential questions. What do I truly want? What am I running from? What am I holding on to that no longer serves me? Self-awareness is the bedrock of inner strength. When you know yourself, your triggers, your patterns, and your priorities, you are better equipped to make decisions that align with your authentic self. Silence doesn't just create space for this self-discovery, it demands it. Sitting quietly with your thoughts can be uncomfortable at first because it forces you to confront parts of yourself you may have been avoiding. But it is through this discomfort that growth happens. Silence builds emotional resilience. One of the most challenging aspects of life is dealing with emotions, whether it's anger, grief, anxiety, or even joy. Silence is a powerful tool for processing these feelings. In moments of distress, our instinct is often to distract ourselves, talk it out, or react impulsively. But silence offers a different path that gives us the chance to sit with our emotions, observe them, and understand their origins. For example, when you experience anger, instead of lashing out or explaining yourself immediately, choosing silence can help you recognize what's fueling that anger. Is it fear? A feeling of being unheard? An unresolved past hurt? By creating space for reflection, you build the capacity to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. This emotional regulation is a hallmark of inner strength that empowers you to remain calm and composed even in the face of adversity. Silence also teaches you to be comfortable with discomfort. Life doesn't always provide easy answers or immediate resolutions, and the ability to sit with uncertainty is a powerful skill. When you practice silence, you learn to accept that not every question has an answer right away, and not every situation needs immediate action. This resilience to not knowing fosters a sense of peace and strength that carries you through difficult times. Silence strengthens focus and discipline. In our fast-paced world, where multitasking is celebrated, silence trains the mind to focus. Whether you practice silence through meditation, journaling, or simply spending time alone, it sharpens your ability to concentrate. It teaches you to tune out distractions and remain present with your thoughts or tasks. This discipline is crucial for achieving long-term goals and staying grounded in the face of challenges. Silence also encourages mindfulness, the practice of being fully present in the moment. When you sit in silence, you notice the details you'd otherwise miss: the rhythm of your breath, the tension in your shoulders, or the subtle emotions lingering beneath the surface. This heightened awareness allows you to approach life with greater intentionality and purpose, strengthening your resolve to stay aligned with your goals and values. Silence cultivates self-reliance. One of the most empowering aspects of silence is the way it nurtures self-reliance. In moments of quiet, you realize that you don't need external validation or constant interaction to feel whole. You become your own source of reassurance, wisdom, and strength. This self-reliance builds confidence and independence, freeing you from the need to seek approval or guidance from others at every turn. When challenges arise, this inner strength becomes invaluable. Instead of panicking or looking outward for solutions, you can trust in your own ability to navigate the situation. Silence teaches you to tap into your intuition and trust your instincts, building a sense of self-confidence that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Silence helps you let go of fear. Many of us fear silence because it forces us to confront our insecurities and doubts. But leaning into that fear is exactly what builds inner strength. In the quiet, you learn that fear is not something to be avoided, but something to be understood. By sitting with your fears in silence, you take away their power. You begin to see them for what they are: temporary feelings rather than insurmountable obstacles. This process of facing fear in silence strengthens your courage. Over time, you realize that you are capable of handling far more than you thought. You develop the ability to face uncertainty and challenge with grace, knowing that silence has taught you how to remain calm and grounded in the face of the unknown. Silence connects you to something greater. Finally, silence builds inner strength by reminding you of your connection to something larger than yourself. Whether it's through prayer, meditation, or simply sitting quietly in nature, silence creates space for you to feel grounded and connected. This sense of connection, whether to the universe, your community, or your deeper self, gives you the perspective and strength to face life's challenges with resilience and grace. In embracing silence, you unlock a reservoir of inner strength that might otherwise go untapped. Silence teaches you to trust yourself, to find clarity amid chaos, and to face life's difficulties with a calm and steady heart. It is not a weakness or an absence. It is an active, deliberate choice to grow, reflect, and build the resilience that sustains you through life's storms. In silence, you don't just endure, you transform. Silence speaks volumes in conflict. Conflicts are an inevitable part of human interaction. Whether in personal relationships, work dynamics, or even larger societal debates, disagreements arise and often escalate through the exchange of words. We are conditioned to believe that in order to resolve conflict, we must always speak, argue, or justify our position. However, sometimes the most powerful tool in conflict is not what we say, but what we choose not to say. Silence can speak volumes in conflict, offering both personal power and an opportunity for resolution that words alone cannot achieve. Silence provides space for reflection. In the heat of a conflict, emotions run high. People are often reacting out of anger, hurt, or frustration, and this emotional energy can cloud judgment. In these moments, silence can be a powerful tool for both parties to process their feelings before reacting impulsively. When you choose silence in the middle of a disagreement, you create a space for reflection both for yourself and for the other person involved. You resist the urge to immediately respond with a counter-argument or a defensive statement. Instead, you give yourself time to evaluate your emotions, gather your thoughts, and decide how to respond in a way that is measured and constructive. This moment of pause doesn't just prevent you from saying something you might regret, it also allows you to approach the conflict with greater clarity and understanding. Furthermore, silence can give the other person the space they need to reflect on their own words and actions. Often when we are in conflict, we are so focused on our own perspective that we fail to truly hear the other person. By remaining silent, you send a subtle but powerful message: I'm not here to dominate the conversation. I am here to listen, to understand, and to work towards resolution. This silence invites the other party to do the same, to step back and evaluate their own position. This act of restraint in the midst of conflict encourages mutual reflection, which is essential for de-escalating tense situations. Silence diffuses escalation. Conflicts often escalate because both parties feel the need to win the conversation or prove their point. We enter debates armed with arguments, rebuttals, and counterpoints, aiming to overpower the other person's stance. However, this back and forth only increases the tension, turning a productive discussion into a heated battle. Silence can disrupt this cycle. When one person in a conflict chooses silence, it defies the expectation of constant verbal exchange. This pause shifts the energy from confrontation to contemplation. It's hard to escalate a conflict when there's no verbal volley to return to. Silence, in this sense, serves as a calming force. It allows both parties to break free from the cycle of reactionary responses, creating a breathing space where the potential for escalation decreases. Moreover, silence sends a message that you are in control of your emotions and are not going to react impulsively. Often the person who speaks the least in a conflict is perceived as the one who holds the power because they are able to remain composed while others become increasingly agitated. This non-reactivity can force the other person to reconsider their approach and perhaps tone down their own verbal aggression, realizing that they are not engaging in a battle of words, but rather a moment of introspection. Silence shifts the focus from defending to understanding. In conflict, we often feel the need to justify our actions, defend our positions, or explain ourselves. The pressure to clarify our intentions can lead to frustration or misunderstanding. But silence can shift the dynamic from a defensive posture to a more open, collaborative space. When you choose to remain silent in the face of an accusation or criticism, it forces the other person to question the validity of their own assumptions. When words aren't being thrown back and forth, the focus moves away from defending positions and toward understanding. A pause in the conversation invites both parties to ask questions like, what is the real issue here? Or why do we feel the way we do? Rather than engaging in a verbal sparring match, silence can lead to a deeper, more meaningful dialogue about underlying feelings, needs, and desires. It allows for a shift from adversarial to cooperative, from fighting to understanding. By resisting the temptation to defend yourself, you create an environment where the conflict can evolve from an attack and defense stance to a conversation about resolution. Silence creates an opportunity for empathy. When we don't feel the need to immediately explain ourselves, we become more open to hearing the other person's perspective. The more we listen in silence, the more we demonstrate our willingness to understand the other person, which can encourage them to do the same. silence as a boundary. In certain conflicts, silence can act as a boundary, signaling that certain behavior is unacceptable or that the conversation has reached an impasse. Rather than engaging in endless argument or verbal escalation, silence can be a way to assert a limit on how far the discussion will go. This is especially important when the conflict involves manipulation, disrespect, or aggression. By choosing silence, you are sending a powerful message: I will not engage in a conversation that does not honor mutual respect. This doesn't necessarily mean you are abandoning the conflict, but rather that you are refusing to allow the discussion to devolve into something unproductive. Silence can be a self-protective measure, an indication that you are not willing to tolerate a conversation that violates your values or boundaries. It places the power in your hands to control the flow of the conflict, giving you the autonomy to walk away or return to the discussion when both parties are ready to engage in a more constructive manner. Silence creates space for growth. Finally, silence in conflict can create the space necessary for both parties to grow. Conflict often arises from differences in perspective, misunderstandings, or unspoken needs. By remaining silent, we allow time for introspection that can lead to personal growth. The silence forces both individuals to examine their own feelings and behaviors and to recognize how they may have contributed to the conflict. In the long term, silence can build resilience and emotional intelligence. By choosing silence in moments of conflict, you cultivate a sense of self-control and emotional maturity. You learn not to react impulsively, but to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. This strengthens your ability to handle future conflicts in a healthier, more productive way, creating opportunities for long-term growth in relationships and within yourself. In essence, silence in conflict is not about avoidance or passivity. It's an active, powerful choice that shifts the dynamic of a disagreement, fosters introspection, and opens the door to deeper understanding. When used wisely, silence speaks volumes, transforming conflict from an adversarial exchange into an opportunity for resolution, empathy, and growth. In a world where communication often revolves around words, whether spoken or written, it's easy to forget that some of the most profound connections are formed not through speech, but through silence. While words are powerful, they can also be limiting. Silence, on the other hand, has the potential to transcend language barriers, quiet misunderstandings, and create a space where true connection can flourish. In the context of relationships, whether personal, professional, or even spiritual, silence can be the most potent force in deepening the bonds between individuals. One of the primary ways that silence fosters deeper connection is by creating a safe space for vulnerability. True intimacy is built on the foundation of trust and the willingness to be seen for who we truly are, without masks or pretensions. When we're constantly talking or filling the air with noise, we often do so as a way of hiding from our insecurities or avoiding difficult emotions. But silence allows us to step away from the need for constant verbal validation and instead be present with our emotions and experiences. When two people share a moment of silence, particularly in the midst of an emotionally charged situation, it signals an unspoken understanding and empathy. Silence in these moments is not awkward or uncomfortable, but rather it's a shared space where both individuals can process their feelings without fear of judgment or interruption. This creates an environment of acceptance, where each person can express vulnerability without the need for constant verbal reassurance. The act of sitting together in silence communicates a profound sense of connection that goes beyond words. Another way silence fosters connection is by creating the space for active listening. In conversations, it's easy to get caught up in the need to reply or to solve problems right away. But often, the most meaningful connections happen when we pause and truly listen, not to respond, but to understand. Silence allows us to step back from the impulse to speak and instead focus fully on the other person's words, emotions, and body language. When you remain silent in a conversation, especially when someone else is sharing something important, it shows that you are fully present. You are not just hearing the words they say, but you are attuned to the emotions behind those words. This kind of deep listening creates a space for connection that goes beyond surface level exchanges. It allows the other person to feel truly heard, validated, and understood. In relationships, being fully present without the distraction of your own thoughts or responses fosters a deeper bond. When you listen without interrupting, without offering advice or solutions, you allow the other person to feel valued. Silence, in this case, becomes an act of respect and nonverbal acknowledgement that the other person's feelings and thoughts are important and worthy of your full attention. Empathy is at the core of all meaningful connections, and silence plays a crucial role in cultivating it. When we are silent, we create space not just to hear others, but to feel with them. In moments of shared silence, we are better able to tune into the emotions of those around us. We move beyond intellectual understanding and into emotional resonance, allowing us to feel what the other person feels. For example, think of a situation where someone is grieving or going through a difficult time. Rather than attempting to comfort them with words that might feel inadequate, offering a moment of silence can communicate empathy more deeply than any well-meaning phrase. It shows the person that you are not only present with them in their pain, but you are also emotionally attuned to what they are experiencing. Silence allows you to feel the weight of the other person's emotions and sit with them in that space. This shared, wordless experience builds a stronger emotional bond, one based on mutual understanding and compassion. Beyond verbal communication, humans often communicate through subtle nonverbal cues, body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and energy. Silence enhances our ability to pick up on these cues, creating an intuitive understanding between individuals. In moments of silence, you're able to tune into the unspoken messages that are just as powerful, if not more so, than words. For instance, in a romantic relationship, you may find that moments of quiet together, whether it's sharing a meal, watching a sunset, or simply sitting in each other's company, can foster a deeper bond. These shared silences build a nonverbal language, one that is uniquely understood by both individuals. There are no words necessary to communicate love, comfort, or connection. The silence becomes its own conversation, one that transcends the need for verbal exchanges. You begin to understand one another on a level that doesn't require constant explanation. In close friendships, silence allows for similar intuitive connections. When you can be silent together, there's an understanding that doesn't need to be verbalized. It's as though the bond itself has its own language that both people recognize instinctively. This type of connection can feel incredibly deep and satisfying because it acknowledges that there is more to communication than words alone. Think about a moment of shared silence after a powerful experience, such as witnessing something beautiful or going through a challenging situation together. The silence that follows is often not awkward, but rather rich with unspoken understanding. It is in these moments that people experience the depth of connection without needing to say a word. The shared silence is a reflection of the bond between individuals as they both carry the weight of the experience in silence together. In relationships, silence is not a void, it is a powerful tool for fostering deeper connection. It allows us to be vulnerable, to listen deeply, to empathize fully, and to understand one another on a level that words alone often cannot reach. In these moments, silence becomes a form of communication in itself, speaking volumes about our willingness to be present, to connect, and to share in the quiet depths of human experience. You said, in a world where we are constantly urged to speak up, assert ourselves, and take immediate action, silence may seem counterintuitive or passive. However, silence can be an incredibly powerful tool for amplifying the impact of our actions, allowing us to move with intention, clarity, and purpose. It's in the moments of stillness that we often discover the most profound insights, develop our deepest convictions, and align our actions with our true values. Silence does not mean inaction. It is the space where deliberate, thoughtful action is born. One of the most powerful ways silence amplifies action is by creating space for clarity. In the noise and hustle of everyday life, it is easy to become overwhelmed by the sheer volume of tasks, opinions, and demands. We can get caught up in trying to solve every problem, address every issue, and meet every expectation. But in these moments, it is hard to take meaningful, impactful action because our minds are scattered and our energy is divided. Silence, on the other hand, clears the mental clutter. When we allow ourselves time to sit in silence, whether through meditation, contemplation, or simply taking a break from the busyness of life, we gain the clarity needed to focus on what truly matters. We are able to assess the situation more objectively, identify the core issues, and make decisions from a place of calm rather than chaos. In these moments of silence, we are not paralyzed by indecision or fear, but rather empowered to act with precision and purpose. By taking the time to reflect in silence, we ensure that the actions we take are not impulsive or reactionary, but are driven by a deep understanding of the situation and a sense of confidence in our choices. In many situations, the instinct to act immediately can be overwhelming. Whether it's in a crisis, a heated argument, or an urgent problem at work, we often feel the need to jump into action without taking a moment to think. However, acting too quickly can sometimes lead to rash decisions, misunderstandings, or unintended consequences. Silence gives us the pause we need to avoid rushing into action before we are ready. Taking a step back to be silent provides the emotional distance and mental space to consider the situation from multiple angles. It helps us avoid knee-jerk reactions and instead encourages us to respond thoughtfully and strategically. Silence doesn't just prevent hasty actions, it deepens our understanding of the issue, helping us to align our response with the most effective solution. In situations of conflict, for example, silence can prevent us from saying something in the heat of the moment that we may regret later. In a business decision, silence allows us to weigh options and consult our intuition before moving forward. By choosing silence, we give ourselves the opportunity to act with greater discernment and wisdom, rather than being swept along by external pressures or emotional impulses. In our fast-paced world, distraction is one of the greatest barriers to achieving meaningful action. We are constantly bombarded with notifications, emails, social media updates, and endless demands on our time. As a result, we often find ourselves spreading our attention thin and taking action without a clear focus. Silence, however, cultivates the focus necessary for truly impactful action. When we are silent, whether through a dedicated period of solitude or simply cutting out distractions, we are able to hone in on the task at hand. We can prioritize our goals, organize our thoughts, and work with undivided attention. Silence sharpens our focus and allows us to give our full energy to the actions that matter most. In the context of personal growth, silence can help us determine which actions align with our long-term vision. Instead of scattering our energy across a multitude of projects or commitments, we can take the time to reflect on what truly serves our purpose. With this clarity, we can direct our efforts toward the actions that will have the greatest impact, knowing that our energy is being channeled into the right areas. One of the greatest challenges in today's world is the expectation of instant results. Whether it's in our careers, relationships, or personal goals, we often feel pressure to see immediate outcomes from our actions. Yet true success rarely happens overnight. Sustainable change requires patience, persistence, and the willingness to keep moving forward, even when immediate results are not visible. Silence teaches us the power of patience in the pursuit of long-term goals. By taking time to reflect, we develop the patience necessary to wait for the fruits of our labor. Silence allows us to let go of the urgency to see quick results and trust that, over time, our actions will produce meaningful change, the fertile ground from which meaningful, intentional, and impactful action can grow. By embracing silence, we create the conditions for clarity, focus, patience, and discipline qualities that amplify the effectiveness of our actions. Silence does not stifle our ability to act, it sharpens it. In a world that often values noise over reflection, silence is the powerful force that helps us act with purpose, precision, and lasting impact. In relationships, silence teaches us to give others the time and space to grow and change. In our careers, it helps us recognize that significant achievements take time to unfold. Silence builds our resilience to continue moving forward with quiet determination, knowing that each action we take is a step toward a larger, more meaningful goal. Silence amplifies intentional action. One of the most profound ways silence amplifies action is by grounding it in intention. In a world that often prioritizes productivity over purpose, it's easy to get caught up in the rush of doing things without truly considering the why behind them. Silence helps us reconnect with our deeper motivations, guiding us to act with intention and clarity. When we embrace silence, we create space to listen to our inner voice, our intuition, values, and desires. This inner guidance becomes the foundation for all our actions. When we are aligned with our purpose, our actions carry greater weight, impact, and meaning. For example, a person who acts out of alignment with their values may find that their actions feel empty or unsatisfying. On the other hand, when someone takes the time to reflect in silence and gain clarity on their values, they can move forward with a sense of purpose that energizes and motivates them. Every action, no matter how small, becomes an expression of their deeper self, amplifying its significance and power. Silence leads to disciplined action. Silence also plays a key role in cultivating the discipline necessary for sustained action. In a world full of distractions, it's easy to lose sight of our goals or to procrastinate on important tasks. Silence, however, provides a powerful antidote to this temptation. By creating moments of stillness, we develop the self-control and discipline to stay focused on the tasks that matter most. Silence allows us to break free from the constant pull of external distractions and reorient ourselves toward our goals. It teaches us to be patient with the process, to stay committed to our actions, and to trust that consistency and effort will lead to meaningful results. In conclusion, silence is not a passive state of inaction. Rather, it is the fertile ground from which meaningful, intentional, and impactful action can grow. By embracing silence, we create the conditions for clarity, focus, patience, and discipline, qualities that amplify the effectiveness of our actions. Silence does not stifle our ability to act, it sharpens it. In a world that often values noise over reflection, silence is the powerful force that helps us act with purpose, precision, and lasting impact. In closing, silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is a powerful force that shapes our actions, deepens our connections, and transforms the way we engage with the world. It allows us to hear our own thoughts, understand others more fully, and respond with intention rather than reaction. In moments of silence, we find clarity, focus, and the strength to act from a place of purpose. So the next time you face a challenge, a conflict, or an opportunity, remember that silence isn't a void to be filled, but a space to be embraced. It is the silent pause that amplifies your actions, transforms your relationships, and reveals the power within you to create lasting impact. In the silence, we find our true strength, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Thank you.